Major support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Colonial Life, providing benefits to employees to help them protect their family, their finances, and their futures. High Point University, the premier life skills university, focused on preparing students for the world as it is going to be. HPU's call to action is choose to be extraordinary. And Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
'Tis the retail season, for sure. Welcome again to the most widely watched and longest-running dialogue on Carolina business, policy, and public affairs. I am Chris William. Happy holidays. And thank you for supporting this program. A little bit later on, we will take a deeper dive around retailing with the Chief Executive Officer of the Fresh Markets. Larry Appel joins us. Before we do that, though, Peter Gwaltney from the North Carolina Bankers Association is here again, as well as publisher and journalist Grady Johnson from South Carolina Biz News joins us, too. We hope you will stay with us.
Gratefully acknowledging support by Martin Marietta, a leading provider of natural resource-based building materials, providing the foundation upon which our communities improve and grow. Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association. Visit us at southcarolinablues.com. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Barings, a leading global asset management firm dedicated to meeting the evolving investment and capital needs of its clients. Learn more at barings.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Peter Gwaltney of the NC Bankers Association, Grady Johnson of SC Biz News, and special guest Larry Appel, CEO of Fresh Market.
Happy holidays. Welcome to our program. Gentlemen, welcome back. Good to have you both here.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Peter, I'll just start with you. And Grady, I fully expect you're going to answer this question, but this is my turn. But here we are in the longest economic expansion since the Civil War, and that's meaningful. That's saying something. Peter, do you get the sense that there is a complacency now? 10 years plus, we think it feels like it's been like this for a long time. Are we forgetting the pain of 08, 09?
I don't think so. This is something we talk about as we travel the state and talk to bankers, and as we have meetings. We remember the ills of the past, and we talk about credit standards, and we talk about the lessons learned from the previous recession, so that we don't make those same mistakes and get into the same situation again.
To your point, I think the banks have held the line on credit standards.
Correct.
You stated it, but I'm talking in general with small businesses, with the younger demographic that's kind of grown up now in the last 10 years and expect that rents keep rising, wages keep going up, et cetera, et cetera. Do you get that sense?
To some degree, but again, in my conversation with bankers, they're reminding their customers that we've seen this before, and they just keep their left foot on the brake, I guess is the way I like to describe it, just to keep expectations reasonable and not to extend credit on values in excess of the value of the home or a car or whatever the asset might be.
Grady, I know you live in the Low Country in Charleston, but of course you cover the state, South Carolina. But when you look at the cost of living in the Low Country, back to this point about expanding economy, I would argue that most likely Charleston and the Low Country are growing much greater than not just other parts of this country, but other parts of the Carolinas. So again, the question around complacency that we will have the trees grow to the sky, if you will.
Well, I think certainly in the Charleston region, there's a wide gap between affordability, housing affordability, and it's really exacerbating the traffic situation. It's the drive till you can afford to live thing, right? So so it's making everything worse. And I wouldn't, we just came through, I'm sure Peter in this too, but we all just came through annual budgeting periods.
Yes.
Yes.
right, which are, like having your teeth pulled. And but all of the businesses that we deal with are going through that. And I wouldn't categorize any of the businesses that we're dealing with as complacent. One thing I would say is just remember that 60% of our national economy is the consumer and consumer spending. And so consumers, on the other hand, are acting differently from businesses. Consumers are driving this economy, and there's an underlying undercurrent of uncertainty that the business community lives in. However, we are, there's makeup on our measles because the consumers continue to buy. And as long as consumers continue to buy, our economy will continue to grow. Sooner or later, inflation, I think, is going to start creeping in, and some things may, need to change. But, currently, that pedal to the metal feeling is consumers.
Well, recently, and I'll say within the last week or so, the recent unemployment number, lowest number in 50 years.
Yeah.
Non-farm payrolls blew past what many thought. So again, back to your point about consumers still spending and driving, is there anything that worries you about that, Peter?
Well, wages are up 3.1%, we heard today with the job number. And so they're spending cash and not using their credit cards. Credit card debt is down, and they're not using their home equity as much as they did in the previous recession. So I'm excited about the consumer demand and the consumer spending, but it appears to be more cash. And so that's a healthy thing.
Let's talk specifics in your market. John Tecklenburg, mayor of Charleston. Nobody wanted to follow the beloved mayor of Charleston, Mayor Joe Riley. John Tecklenburg not only won that election, but won re-election. Was that surprising?
It was surprising to me, just for what you stated. I just thought, the poor guy or woman who follows Joe Riley.
Joe Riley dropped the mic on stage and walked off.
But Mayor Tecklenburg has done some good things, and re-election, people voted him back in, and so I think more power to him. I think. But I was very surprised, just because who wants to follow Mayor Joe?
Right, sure, Mayor Joe. Peter, Truist, formation of BB&T and SunTrust banks.
Yes.
No surprise, they announced a tie-up, and Kelly King was very specific about continuously saying this is a merger of equals. They have shown that on the operating committee. It's half and half. How does the Truist tie-up? They're going to be located in Charlotte, and again, no surprise there, but how does the Truist tie-up change the landscape of banking in the Carolinas? Does it really?
My personal opinion is that it doesn't. We had two great banks with great cultures that have now combined and headquartered in Charlotte, and so the combined heft and the lending ability and all of that just continues here in the state. Competition is fierce already. I don't see it getting any more fierce, but customers have more choices, and we have more lending power and more banking capacity here in the state now as a result of this.
To take that a little bit further, not necessarily about Truist, but this idea of banking, traditional banking, I'm going to call it shadow banking. I'm going to call things like PayPal, even cryptocurrency. Facebook announced that they're going to have a currency called Libra, and they put that on hold, but they've got an intention there. But all of these things around what traditional cash flow and management have been in banks is now a lot fuzzier. Is that a concern? Do you embrace that? I mean, what does that look like long term?
Well, we embrace innovation. We certainly do. Our message to the regulatory agencies is all we want is a level playing field. So if you're in the banking space, you need to be regulated accordingly. Now, all of these Venmo and all of these Zelle and cryptocurrency, all these things, in my role at the Bankers Association, I feel like I need to understand these things, so I use them. And I've gotten involved in those things just so I can understand them. And what I've learned is there's not an 800 customer service line. If you have a problem with your account, there's no one to call. It's really hard. And so I think millennials and even people our age who use these products and use these payment systems need to use them appropriately and not bet the ranch on them. A banking relationship is critical, and these are good things to use, but we just want them to be regulated like any other banking product.
A broader question about the economy. Let's come back to that before we go to our guest. All of these things that we're talking about are good. And again, back to the point about the expanding economy. Grady, when the economy turns, and it eventually will, we don't know that it's going to be bad. We don't know that it's going to be a mild recession, good recession, deep recession. Chances are that it's going to be mild, but it will turn. What does that look like? How bad does that get? And all of these challenges that we have now are challenges, but when the economy turns, these challenges are going to be exacerbated.
Well, you know, my main concern, and we talked before we got here, that the Fed has seemed to have used all the tools in their toolkit during a time of expansion, the things that you would normally do, cutting interest rates and some of those other dials and knobs. They've turned those sort of prematurely, in my opinion. So I'm kind of concerned that monetary policy doesn't have a lot more options, and I'm dying to hear what Peter's folks would say about that. But I do think that businesses got burned so bad, Chris, during the last recession that everybody is keeping their powder dry. I don't know of any business who isn't worried about exactly what you're saying. It's in every conversation I've been in with people. Future planning. They're keeping some things in reserve just in case that happens. And I think you may see massive layoffs and some of these other things, but I also think people are really, because employment is so tight, businesses, you can't spend more on employees because there's no more employees. So you've had to invest in technology to increase productivity. So how those two things balance out in a recession or whatever you want to call it, it's anyone's guess. But I think people are a little more prepared than they were last time. But I'd be really interested to hear what you're.
And you got about 30 seconds.
Sorry.
Well, and so when we talk about a recession, and I learned this in a group recently, we had our Young Bankers Council together, and we talked about when the next recession comes, because the business cycle hasn't been repealed. We'll have another one. I could see the fright in their eyes, because the only recession they know is the one we went through, the Great Recession. Previous recessions were not as long and as deep, and so the next recession might not be long and deep like the one we just came out of.
But there's a once bitten, twice shy mentality that a lot of these young folks, that's the only one they've experienced.
Correct. And so that has a speed governor on their expectations of how they spend, and also this has affected small businesses and other commercial customers of banks just in terms of how much credit they should take out.
So maybe being aware and maybe hoarding cash, as a lot of companies as well as banks have been doing, is not a bad thing. Gentlemen, thank you. We're going to ask actually that question and more. Next couple programs we do are some of our favorite of the year. Not that you all are not fun. But we have 4 resident economists, and every year they join us at the end of the year and at the beginning of the next year to take a look back. We call it an economic review and an economic forecast. It is an interesting dialogue. 4 economists include Sarah House from Wells Fargo, Dr. John Conitson from UNC Charlotte, Dr. Frank Hefner from the College of Charleston, and Dr. Doug Woodward from the Moore School of Business at USC. It is quite the mashup, and it is a bit of a free-for-all, and we hope you will join us for that beginning next week. You know, you can tell it is a good economy, as we've been talking about in many ways, but our cities and even our smaller towns, it's almost over-retailed. And that seems no more true than it is in food retailing. Joining us now is the Chief Executive Officer of Greensboro-based The Fresh Market, Larry Appel. Larry, welcome to the program.
Chris, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Is that fair to say that it's over-retailed?
I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of competition and that more and more are coming in. The Carolinas in particular, frankly, are almost a ground zero for that. I could probably name 15 food retailers in these markets, and that's a lot.
So, Larry, the Fresh Markets kind of grew up in Greensboro. Grew up in Greensboro.
Absolutely.
And feel like you probably, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there is a DNA of the Fresh Market from the Carolinas. And now you've got Wegmans looking at it, you've got Whole Foods, et cetera, Winn-Dixie, of which you spent some time.
Sure.
Food Lion, Harris Teeter, Kroger. I mean, they're all crowded in here. Do you feel like you've got to do something pretty spectacular to defend your turf? Or what is your strategy going forward?
I don't know about spectacular, but we think we have a strategy which is fairly unique and does have value to the guest, and the trick is then to execute on that. I think of our company not as a traditional grocery store, a category manager, somebody who wants to carry all of the possibilities so that no matter what you're looking for, you can find it here. We're a curator. We go out in the world, and we try to find unique, great products. And by putting a unique collection together, we serve a different role than a lot of the conventional grocery stores. And our trick is letting the guests out there know about that and making sure that we've got something that they want when they come in the store.
Peter?
I was excited to read about your decision last month about your headquarters.
Yeah.
We have some great companies headquartered in North Carolina, including yours. And as part of your decision to stay in Greensboro, stay headquartered in North Carolina, you received state incentives and some local incentives. And I was excited to read about the collaboration between High Point and Greensboro in putting their funds together to be a part of that total package. I'm curious about how those incentives work and how that played into your decision to make the decision to stay.
Absolutely. First off, Greensboro is the only home that the Triad area is the only home that we've ever known, and we're excited that we'll be staying there. I thought that the way that the two cities, the county and the state, came together and worked together to put something that made sense together was both innovative and important, and I give those municipalities and states a lot of credit for that. For us, there's always a balance, right? I've got shareholder needs, I've got team member needs, I've got community needs, and I have to find a way to balance all of those in a way that's appropriate. And the incentives were very important for us to be able to do that in a way where we can stay in our home. And I would say, I think that they were structured as a win-win-win. The incentives come as and when we grow and create opportunity for our team members, for new folks, and in our community. So the incentives are structured in a way where we all win together.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Seems like grocery stores, more and more prepared foods is becoming an important thing for the store, and inside the store, places to eat and things like that. I mean, do you ever see a point where you become a restaurateur that sells groceries?
I think that for us, now our stores are smaller and more intimate, so we do a little bit less of the eating in. We have some tables in a lot of stores, but I don't think we're ever going to be a restaurant per se. But one of the things that the Fresh Market was built on was the prepared foods case there. Mm-hmm. And I do think that translates very well into what's core to us, which is a meal solution strategy. People are looking for to expand their eating ruts and to find great solutions for meals. And yes, I think it's very important that we offer that. The way I think of that, though, is sort of turn the dining room lights on. That's about people being able to come into our stores and get something that's either ready to heat or ready to cook, something where we've made it easy for them to create something at home that they can then go home and enjoy. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is I know that's essential to our strategy. And all the research that we've done says that that's an important need for the consumer.
So that, Larry, the natural progression would say, well, then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but the natural progression would be, okay, Blue Apron, Sunbasket, HelloFresh, those are no longer separate standalone entities, but grocery stores or food retailers like Fresh Market do that on their own, or do that maybe more effectively. Would that be accurate?
I actually think we do it more effectively. And if you think about our store and you walk one of our stores, you'll see meal solutions all over the store. You know, what we call value added, but all the beautiful value added products in the meat case and the seafood case, where you can get a pecan encrusted trout or kebabs that are made. But then very specifically with respect to what people would call meal kits, right, we have our market meal kits. And those are meals, we've done all the prep. You can enjoy them. Probably take you 10 to 15 minutes to cook them with 1 or 2 pots or pans. You really don't need anything else. If they're saucing, we've sauced it. And unlike some of the market meal kits that would be delivered as a freestanding business, those proteins and those vegetables, those are all pulled right out of the store. Those kits are prepared in store. So you're getting the same fresh product that you get when you come back to our meat case and say, can you cut me 2 steaks? But you're getting it fully prepped in a way where you can put a meal together that's very simple, very quick, and meet your needs as a family. And I do think that that's very important. And to that extent, I do think that there's a little bit of a blurring between what it means to be a restaurant and what it means to be a grocery store. It's about feeding families. For us, it's more, I think, still at home than in the store.
Let me go, hold on one second, Peter. I want to follow this on. Let me go on the other side of the supply chain and say farm to fresh was all the rage not long ago and still is. Mm-hmm. So does that mean that farm to fresh all the way through a place like the Fresh Market to the meal prep and delivery? Are you trying to do that?
Absolutely. And I think that that's really important. And farm to fresh can mean a lot of things. Sometimes it means we're flying peaches in, right? So that the number of days between the time they're picked and the number of days you can buy them is reduced as opposed to other ways to get them in. Sometimes it means a local farm. There are lots of different ways to do that. But absolutely, our job is to make sure that it doesn't just look fresh on our shelf, but it looks fresh 3 days later when you take it out of your refrigerator. Otherwise, what was the point?
Yeah, what's the point? Peter, thank you.
What fascinates me is that we've got so many cultural and demographic shifts taking place in our country and certainly here in the Carolinas. And we have the innovations of technology that enable us to sit at home and order food and have it delivered to our homes. All of these things are taking place and they're affecting all businesses. Mm-hmm. But in the grocery business, how do you determine and discern what's a trend and what's a fad in terms of how you embrace it and innovate and offer it to your customers?
Sure. Well, first off, so we employ chefs. And we consider consumer insights and consumer research and understanding taste trends and what's going on an important part of how we go to market. And you test things and you try things. If you go into what we call our CMS case, our Convenient Meal Solutions case, it's that prepared foods case that in all of our stores, you'll see evolution and innovation all of the time. Some of it seasonal, some of it food trend. Some things work and some things don't. The things that work you build on, the things that don't, well, they turned out to be a fad. But when you, for instance, go to, we were talking about the market meal kits. Well, so one of our most successful items there is a Korean beef stir fry, right? And that's allowing somebody to cook something at home because you've done the prep and sauced it that they wouldn't cook for themselves at home. And that's fun and people enjoy that. And that's an important part of what we think we bring. We say that our mission is to inspire our guests to make everyday eating extraordinary. Well, trying new foods and being able to eat better is all part of that.
Outstanding.
On the farm to table and then picking up on the trends thing as well, are you guys working with local farms, Department of Agriculture to provide feedback back out to the farms? Are you working directly to help source things sort of in reverse instead of waiting for somebody to call you to say, hey, we have peaches? Are you going out and say, hey, we need this, can you guys go grow this?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So we have there are a lot of farmer relationships that we have, and we're continually talking to folks about what their capabilities are and what we see in the industry. But I'd say it's still a little more of a push a push to us than a push out from us, if I were in full disclosure.
To follow on the back of that, farm bankruptcies have gone up 24% since 2018, and that's a bit of a disturbing trend. And obviously, we have the China trade tariffs. Does that affect? How does that? I don't want to sound clinical about it, but how does it affect you down the line? And is there some concern with your local partners, local farm partners?
We clearly have concern for all of our local partners, and I think it's important that the industry be diverse. Having said that, I would say that the impacts all the way down the line to us are fairly subtle as opposed to the kind of impacts that you would see in the agricultural community to those kinds of bankruptcies.
We've got about 2 minutes left, Larry.
Yeah.
As the economy continues to expand, if it slows down, who blinks first? And I'm not going to ask you to itemize out which chain is going to pull or not go or shut a store. But how do you maintain your ground when you've got so many grocers on so many corners in so many communities? And how do you make sure that the fresh market is a unique experience and makes it through the next downturn?
Sure. So I won't speak to who blinks first, second, or third. I'll only say we won't blink. And the reason we won't blink, I believe, is because we're making smart business decisions. We're not growing for growth's sake. We're not expanding for expansion's sake. We're investing in the communities where we live and making sure that we're innovating within those stores to be a leader in fresh specialty food. We believe there's a need for that, and we believe there's a market for that, and come good times or bads, there's always going to be a market for that. And so by sticking to our knitting, sticking very focused to our strategy, which we believe differentiates us in the marketplace, we'll let whatever else happens, happens, and we'll focus on being a great store for our guests and growing our business in that way.
In going through the next 10 years, what do you hope your per annum store growth is?
In terms of units?
In terms of, yeah, just as a general percentage.
I don't set a factor. I think in the short term, over the next year or two, our growth is going to be slower over time.
Okay.
I'd love to see us expanding, multiple stores a year.
Okay, all right. Larry, thank you for being on the program.
My pleasure.
Welcome. Please come back.
I'd love to.
Happy holidays.
You too.
Nice to see you, Grady.
Pleasure.
Peter, always
Thank
good
you
to
very
have you on the
much.
program. Thank you. Until next week, I'm Chris William. Happy holidays, and thank you for supporting this dialogue. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review provided by High Point University, Martin Marietta, Colonial Life, the Duke Endowment, Barings, Grant Thornton, Sunoco, Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, and by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.